Good evening. I'd like to call the meeting to order for the Oxnard City Council Public Works and Transportation Committee meeting for October 11th, 2022. The time is 8:30. This is a Zoom meeting. We'll have the city clerk read the information with the Zoom meeting. When it comes to the Pledge of Allegiance, we'll have our Assistant City Attorney do the Pledge of Allegiance. And when we get to that time, I would like to request a moment of silence for a couple of people. Thank you. So, Madam Clerk.
Chair Perillo.
Here.
Member Zaragoza.
Here.
The agenda for this meeting was posted on the City Hall Bulletin Board on October 4th, 2022. Zoom details to call in for public comment during a meeting. Please dial phone number 888-475-4499. Enter ID number 816-6504-3622. Passcode 169666. If you wish to speak during public comments or a particular item on the agenda, please sign on by following the Zoom calling in steps. Once the presiding officer calls for public speakers, press *9 to raise your hand and inform the city clerk you would like to speak during the public speaking section for that particular item on the agenda while in the Zoom waiting room. In accordance with Assembly Bill 361 and in response to the declared state and local emergencies due to the novel coronavirus, the legislative body will meet in person and remotely. To participate remotely, visit www.oxnard.org. To find out how you may provide public comment, please refer to the instructions below or go to www.https://www.oxnard.org/citymeetings/ The public may view the meeting from home on Spectrum Channel 10, Frontier Channel 5, or YouTube at youtube.com/Oxnard News. Video recordings of this meeting will be available online following the meeting at the city's website at www.oxnard.org/citymeetings. Please see the link for the Measure M pre-recorded presentation video for each item listed on this agenda.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Clerk.
You're welcome, Chair Perillo.
We'll have our Assistant City Attorney, Miss Michelle McLaren, please lead the Pledge of Allegiance. And I'd just like to ask, we take a moment of silence again for Mr. Efren Gore. He was very big in City Corps. But I learned today that another individual who had some connection with the city of Oxnard, and it's unique because it was mentioned in the LA Times in his obituary, Mr. Art LeBeau, very famous for music at night, and the city of Oxnard is mentioned in his obituary. A moment of silence for both, please. Thank you. Madam Clerk, do we have any public comments not on the agenda or items not on the agenda, either on phone or written?
We have one caller, virtual caller, however, their hand is not up. And we do not have any public speakers here in person. Would you like me to call upon the person who's on the line virtually?
Please do.
Thank you. Caller with phone number ending in 4978. Please unmute by pressing *6. Hello?
My name is Larry Stein.
Are you calling for
Right now,
public
the
comment
city
on
clerk made it
items not
very
on the
difficult.
agenda?
Miss-
Sir?
Miss- Mr.
Yes,
Stein, are
I
you
wanna
calling
speak
for
to
items
item
on, not on the agenda?
You stupid little lady.
Wait, Larry,
The city clerk has been very disrespectful by not making these meetings available to the public through YouTube.
Chair, we do not have any
I wish to
additional.
speak- I wish to speak on this item.
Chair, this is the only speaker we have at the moment.
Wish to speak item not on the agenda. The city clerk cut me off.
Mr.
So
Stein,
I'm
you were not
concerned
cut
about the
off.
fact
You
I
have three,
submit-
you weren't cut off. It's just that you're not listening. You have 3 minutes to speak. Please proceed.
I've submitted a public record request for public works as it pertains to the construction of the great programs of 3 tiers. I submitted this public record request in June, the end of June. City staff has indicated that we have sufficient water, provide water for the community. Stated we had sufficient water to build 10,000 new homes for the new community. I've asked to see the documentation that justifies the support of building 10,000 new homes and the water supply. I've asked for the timeline and construction and cost on planning and developing the 3 skids of water in the well necessary for 21,000 acre feet of water. I've asked this numerous times from the city attorney's office, and the city attorney refuses to make the public documents available. The city attorney has not issued a letter that's saying the documents are not available. So assuming the fact that the documents are available, because the city attorney's office said the documents has not said the documents are not available, documents must be available. So the city clerk is dragging them behind using dilly-dallying delays, preventing the public from seeing these documents that the city staff has sworn to the state of California that the water is available to build 10,000 new homes, despite the fact that we are in a drought and we have water restrictions. So why can't the city officials who say the fact that we have sufficient water for 10,000 new homes while we're on water restrictions make the documents available? I've asked for these documents numerous times over the last 4 months and not made available. I'd like to have the city attorney's office address this issue since we have the city attorney's office in the audience right now. Thank you very much.
thank you, Mr. Stein. And I'm taking the chair's prerogative right here. Dilly-dally and delay are famous words from a prior administration, a prior city manager, and they came out in a district attorney investigation of the city of Oxnard, not this administration, Mr. Stein. You of all people are well aware of that. So I wanted to clear that point up. Madam City Attorney, is there anything we need to address on this?
No, there's nothing.
Thank you very much. Okay, moving on. No other comments and public comment?
No additional public speakers. Thank you, Chair Perillo.
Thank you very much. And I apologize that you took a browbeating there. Apologize for that. On the consent agenda, item C1, City Clerk Department, approval of the minutes. The recommendation of the Public Works and Transportation Committee approve the minutes for September 17, 2022, special meeting in the September 27, 2022, regular meeting as presented. Do we have any comments on this, Madam Clerk?
We do not have any public speakers in person or virtually. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mayor, do you have any concerns or
No,
questions?
none.
Neither do I.
Move approval.
I will second that. Roll call vote, please, Madam Clerk.
Member Zaragoza,
Yes.
Chair Perillo.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries 2-0.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Next item on the agenda, D1, reports. Public Works Department, subject, amendment to the Trade Services Agreement A-8171 with Garcia's Landscaping Maintenance Incorporated for landscaping and ball field maintenance in River Park, CFD number 5. The recommendation that the Public Works and Transportation Committee recommend that the City Council approve and authorize the mayor to execute the first amendment to the Trade Services Agreement number A-8171 with Garcia Landscaping Maintenance Incorporated to increase the not to exceed amount from $3,120,435 to $4,300,607 and to extend the term from November 5th, 2022 to November 5th, 2023 for the performance of landscaping and ball field maintenance in River Park CFD 5. There is a presentation due to the Measure M issues. And Madam Clerk, do we have any public comments or any written comments on this?
We have not received any written comments. We do not have any public speakers virtually or in person. Thank you, Chair Perrello.
Thank you very much. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, I just, Michael who's Steve? I was just I listened to the report, you know, that you made, and one of the things that was mentioned that extending the agreement with Garcia is much cheaper to extend that for an additional year than to go out there and start all over again. Is that correct?
Chair Perillo and Mayor Zaragoza, Steve Hallett, Assistant Public Works Director. I just want to let you know that online, we also have Eric Story, our Special Districts Manager,
Okay.
and Anthony Miller, our Project Manager for River Park. But to answer your question, yes, we're experiencing cost increase with our contractors right now. Even our current contractors are saying that they can no longer meet their current contract obligations for pricing. So with that going on with various contractors that we're dealing with, we assume that if we were to put this out to bid, the costs will go up substantially.
I think with this extension, is there a 2% increase? For that?
Correct. The contract had a 2% increase per year. So this has gone through 3 years now. So there's been 2 increases. So with the passage of this amendment, there would be another 2% increase in addition.
And the maintenance of the restrooms stays the same and so forth.
Correct.
Thank you, sir. Mhm.
Thank you. This is a question for Mr. Story or Mr. Miller. In the performance of the duties of this contractor, have you been satisfied? Do we have oversight? Who checks and how often do we check on the quality of work that we're receiving from this contractor?
I'll take this one.
Thank you.
Good evening. Good evening, committee. I am the direct manager of this contract, and generally speaking, I've been pleased with the work that they do, and we are evaluating and I would say inspecting their work on a weekly basis, following their routine through the River Park area.
Thank you very much, because there are a very few that continually question how the city is managing the contracts, and I'm grateful to hear that you're checking at least on a weekly basis. Thank you. Have there been any concerns with the organizations that use the ball fields? I believe it's the El Rio Little League. Any issues that they bring to your attention?
Not in regards to this particular contract.
Those are the only questions I have. Thank you both for being here and bring yourselves up to answer questions.
And Mr. Chair, too, Steve, the Garcia's been doing a pretty good job all the way across the city, right?
Correct.
Because I've seen them all over the place, you know, and they seem to be very productive, good workers, and they have very good equipment too, by the way, which I think is really, really great.
I'll second every comment the mayor just made there because they're doing a bang up job for the city of Oxnard.
Chair, if I could
Go ahead.
make a clarifying statement. You had asked a previous question about the restrooms, continuing the servicing of the restrooms. Just for clarification, this amendment also includes an additional up to $108,000 for additional restroom cleanings. What this is for is whenever we have park reservations to get ready for a park reservation or after a park reservation, they're basically on-call services to cover for these weekend services on the restroom. So we anticipate no higher than $108,000 for these additional services, which would change the restroom servicing.
Thank you for that information. And thank you, Mr. Wolf. On this information with the reservations, if people reserve parks or areas where there are bathrooms, do they put a fee up if they leave the area in less than the situation that they found it? A deposit of some kind?
Anthony, can you respond to that? Anthony's the one who takes the reservations for the special districts.
Yeah, so I do issue the reservation permits for the River Park area, and there is a $50 cleaning deposit, security deposit for the main reservation pavilions only in River Park. which is the barbecue area number 1 with the gazebo style coverings. And it's rare that we withhold them, but it has happened occasionally. But there is, like I said, there's a $50 deposit.
Thank you. I go to that park every once in a while and I'm always impressed. The bathrooms are in very nice shape. The park's in very nice shape, and the park is extremely well used, including the dog park. Very well used in the mornings and in the late evenings. So thank you for that work. Thank you, Mr. Howard. I have no other questions. Do you have any more?
No, no other questions. Thank you.
City manager, do you have anything you want to add?
No, thank you.
Okay,
So move approval.
second.
Mhm.
And again, we had no one is called in, Madam Clerk, on this.
We do not have any
you.
public speakers for this item. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair Perrello,
Yes.
Member Zaragoza.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries 2-0.
The next item on the agenda, is reports under Public Works Department. The subject. Recommend speed limits 2022 engineering and traffic survey results. To be presented to the city council for their review and comments. And number 3, recommend that the city council approve introduction of the 2022 speed limit ordinance at the November 1, 2022 council meeting and first reading by title only, waiving further reading of the ordinance amending section 8-2 of Article 1 of Chapter 8 of the Oxnard City Code. This will be a live presentation upon the consultant's request, and personally, I find that refreshing that there's an opportunity for the public, those that are watching at home, and I hope there are a lot, as I don't see any unfamiliar faces in the audience. I wish more people would attend and pay attention. It's all affecting your city and my city. Please, and we have City Engineer Tatiana Aruna at the podium.
Chair Perrello, if I may, I would like to introduce our consultant. His name is Andrew Yee. He's with LSY Consultants. He is actually the one who performed this study and will be doing the presentation for you all here today. He's been doing a lot of great work here for the city, at least for the last 4 to 5 years. And yeah, so with that, I'll let him start.
It's a pleasure to see you again, Mr. Andrew Yee, and thank you very much. And just one question, Madam Clerk, are there any speakers on this item?
We do not have any public speakers virtually or in person.
Okay, and if anyone does call in, we'll take them at the end of the item. Thank you very much. Mr.
Good
Yee?
evening, Chair Perrello and Member Zaragoza. My name is Andrew Yee with LSY Enterprise. My firm was retained by city to conduct engineering traffic survey study for the city to establish a speed limit on city streets. I want to thank you for this opportunity to speak in front of you. Also want to thank the city's public works engineering staff and Oxnard Police Department for providing required and necessary information and reviewing and commenting on the study. So with that, the following is the city staff's recommendation to the Transportation Committee. Receive and comment on 2022 speed limit survey results on 49 streets. There are 175 road segments in the city of Oxnard. Recommend the survey results be presented to the city council for their review and comment, and recommend that city council approve introduction of 2022 speed limit ordinance at November 1st, 2022 council meeting, and first reading by title only, waiving further reading of ordinance amending section 8-2 of Article 1 of Chapter 8 of Oxnard City Code. There are 3 different speed laws. First one is the basic. Regardless of the speed limit, driver must drive at the safe speed based on prevailing condition. So example, if there is visibility because of fog, the roadway might be slippery because of rain, then you need to slow down, or there's a presence of a pedestrian activity or bicycle, you need to be slowed down. And you cannot necessarily, you have to slow down below speed limit. The other speed limit is set by state law. It's called prima facie and on certain type of roadways. For example, Register Street is 25 miles per hour based on state law. Alleyway is 15. Some of the business district, you can set it at 25 as well. Other than that, you have to go through setting the speed limit process. So if you don't do that, the speed limit by default for the undivided two-lane roadway is a 55 miles road. Other multi-lane roads are 65 miles per road. For example, Oxnard Boulevard, in absence of a speed survey, it is 65. As I mentioned, it is law that you need to set the speed limit. Otherwise, you're going to have a high speed limits throughout your streets. And it's also effective means of doing enforcement for the police. If you don't have a speed limit set, the police cannot use this type of device, either laser or radar, to enforce speed. And so they must have to pace every car to enforce the speed limits, which is very difficult and dangerous. And if you ask any police personnel, they would not want to do that. The last reason for setting the speed limit is you want to set the speed limit that is reasonable so that the majority drivers are conformed to the speed limit you set out there. You want drivers to drive about close to each other at the speed. You don't want one going too fast, the other one going too slow. You want to have a certain speed limit. Everybody goes about the same speed. So and therefore, you have a better flow on your roadways. We have used procedures defined in the vehicle code and California Manual Uniform Traffic Control Device, MUTCD. Also, there's manual by state how to set the speed limit. We utilize all those in our study. There were some changes made in setting the speed limits. AB 43, Assembly 43 was approved last year and effective of this year. The changes, one of the significant changes, prior speed limits, how it's set, is strictly based on 85th percentile. 85th percentile is when you collect the speed sample. Let's say you collect hundreds of speed samples. 85th highest speed is 85th percentile. So in translation, 85% of the speed sample driving at that speed or below. And typically you set the speed based on that. One example, let's say your speed data shows 85th percentile is 43. Then the maximum speed limit, the highest speed limit you can set, or lowest speed limit you can set is 40 miles per hour. You can't go beyond that. That is previous law. However, 43 has changed that. And they give us more options to setting the speed limit. I can go through that a little bit more. And they give us some other options for jurisdictions to consider in setting the speed limit, such as when you have a lot of pedestrian activities and bicyclists, you can utilize.
So, Mr. Chair, so if the 85 percentile is going 50 miles an hour, then you can set it, the discretion is to set it at 50, or is that correct?
You can go down to 45.
45, the 5 mile.
Yes, you cannot go down beyond that. When it's a 85th come out to, let's say 43, you can go down to 40 and you cannot go down further. That's the previous law. But 85th come out to be 42, you can bring it down to 40, which is based on the 85th percentile. However, you can bring down another 5 miles.
Okay.
So depend on where 85th, it's above halfway, then you have limitation to only go down to next truncated speed limits.
Good. Okay, thank you.
So the difference is now it gives a local authority to, as I explained, that when you have an 85th come out to be really higher than current speed, you can able to retain the existing speed limit.
Okay.
If the licensed engineer determined that there was no significant change made on the roadway from the last survey. I can give you an example, Oxnard Boulevard nearby Gonzales, its speed limit is 45 miles per hour right now. Let's say your 85th come out to 53. The old law limits you to go down to 50. So you're going to have an increase of 5 miles per hour on speed limit. However, with AB 43, you can retain 45 miles of current speed. And we have utilized this code section more than about 30 segments in your city. So we prevent speed limits to go up on those road segments. The other element is that it is not active until June of 2024. And then the law said you can go down an additional 5 miles, which you couldn't do it before, but that have to wait till June of 2024. There are 3 factors, elements in considering setting the speed limits. The first one is the spot speed data. Basically, you go out there, collect a sample using this type of device. It's a radar unit. Usually about minimum of 100 samples and determine the statistical data. Then the other thing, we use a collision rates. You look at the mid-block collision rates, and then you compare with the statewide collision rate. If it's higher than statewide collision rate, we consider that as a factor. We did not use 2020 data because it's most recent data because the pandemic has altered the traffic condition. We couldn't use the 2021 data because it wasn't available at the time of study. The other element we consider is the roadway characteristic. Consideration is given to like schools, school crosswalks, bicycle lanes, where you have a vulnerable users. Make sure that elements are considered in setting the speed limits. So after all have done, what we have done is each segment will have this survey results summary sheet. And here you have roadway names and speed data information. And when survey was done, the collection analysis of data, and then you have a collision rates, collision information there. Also, you have a roadway characteristics. All that compilation of determining speed limits. So here also says existing speed and recommended speed and justification for recommendation. In addition, we have next sheet that attached to that is actual speed data evaluation. And this is actually calculation sheet, shows all the speed samples on it, and also gives you 50 percentile data, 85th percentile by pace, and very detailed information about speed.
A question for the public. Did you consistently time the speed data at the same times of day, or do you randomly check?
You actually go out, it's not the same time, but you typically take a sample anywhere from 9 o'clock to 3 o'clock. You don't want to during the peak hour. You want to have a free flow kind of a time so that you're trying to collect the data unimpeding moving vehicle sample.
Do you specifically pick weekdays or weekends, or do you blend the weekday weekends?
No weekends. We
weekends.
typically do Tuesday through Thursday. Most of traffic engineers conduct their surveys during from Tuesdays to Thursdays. They don't do Fridays or Mondays. Unless you specifically need it for the weekend, you need to do it, but usually you don't do that.
Thank you very much.
So, Mr. Chair, so then you combine the morning traffic, PM traffic with the midday traffic. Right? You combine the morning traffic to work and from work with the mid-speed traffic. Is that correct? To get that speed.
I'm not quite sure I
Okay,
understand your
in order
question.
to come out with an average speed,
Okay.
there's people rushing in the morning and the PM, and then people in the midday. So my question is the traffic then average for the entire day, morning, mid, and PM?
No, we do not average. This is just a spot study. We just go out there, maybe 30 minutes,
Okay.
1 hour, collect the data during that time. We try to avoid morning traffic time and evening traffic time because there are a lot of times bunched together, so it's not good time to collect the sample.
Yeah, because I was noting and knowing that in your part one, from and to charts, you come out with different speed limits, like, for example, from First Street to Robert Street, from Rose Avenue to Paseo Mercado and so forth, so. But then the spot checks is what you're saying.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
thank you.
So after this result, we are looking at about 10 roadway segments is going to have a decreased speed limits. And 3 roadway segments are new speed limit. There were no speed limits established previously. Remaining 162 roadway segments will be retained current speed limits. These are the locations where have a decrease in speed limit. I would like to point out a couple of locations. Oxnard from town center to Vineyard. The south of Vineyard right now, 45 miles per hour. North from the freeway to Vineyard is 50. And we are proposing it to change to 45. So you will have a continuous 45 a speed limit from the freeway, 101 freeway, all the south of Vineyard. South of Gonzales.
Mr. Chair, is that going to impede traffic, by lowering it by 5 miles? Is it
In-
going to slow traffic or create traffic jams as a result of that?
No, sir. I think one of the things that city is trying to do, I think the city is planned to retime your signal system. So signal will be
Oh, okay.
coordinated. That'll help the traffic flow.
Got you. Okay.
Actually, that'll help traffic to slow down because it's much more smooth flow and there's no interruptions.
Because Ventura Road is a good example. I think it's 40 miles an hour. And if you go 40 without any with minimal traffic, you can get all the green lights.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
So if you
Alex
time,
is laughing there. No, you don't believe that?
if you time your signal, if you
Yes.
coordinate it well, you can control the pattern of traffic. So
Mhm.
you minimize number of stops. Therefore, people are much more comfortable driving that way.
That's
And
right.
in a sense, it makes it better for safety and traffic to flow a lot smoothly and slowly.
Okay, thank you.
And the other one I want to point out, Oxnard Boulevard between Channel Island, Pleasant Valley, and currently it's 60 miles per hour. We are changing, we're proposing to change that to 55 miles per hour.
Can you repeat that, please?
The Oxnard between Channel Island overcrossing and Pleasant Valley,
Mhm.
current speed limit is 60 miles per hour. And we are proposing to change that to 55.
Oh, okay.
So you are decreasing 10 roadway segments.
Interesting.
It's impressive. I know that we've had past traffic engineers that have commented when they first came to Oxnard, Mr. Bokamp especially, he said people drive awfully fast in the city. And with the recent incidents, with the traffic accidents and various things, if you're going faster, it's a little more difficult to slow down. And people try to race through the yellow to get to, and they end up getting caught in the red. This might work. What do you think, in your professional opinion, is going to be, and for lack of a better way for me to explain it, the canary in the coal mine, the first thing that we will notice if this is not working as hoped for?
I think your questions are quite complex for me.
Well, it's if we start to have
More accidents.
more accidents, or if we start to have longer waits
That's the
for traffic lights, will that be something as a flashing yellow light for us to maybe revisit it? I wished I explained it better, but
I understand. So
Thank you.
there is few in traffic engineering. one of the things you want to do, you want the roadway system to flow.
Yeah.
And speed not necessarily is a main factor. You can go at 45 versus 50. You can get your destination faster. What I'm saying is, typically localized setting, you have a lot of signalized location, you have a lot of interruptions. You got breaks in the middle, you got driveways, all that is an interruption. If you're able to manage those things better, traffic will flow better and get to your destination a lot faster. So one of the things critical in local setting is coordination timing. Make sure your signals are timed well so that you can able to move the traffic through the intersection. Because if you look at intersection, large intersection, you basically have 8 different phases. You know, left turns all goes differently, and you got through right, east, west, north, south, they all go differently. So you have to make coordination between that intersection, other intersection along the corridor. I think the city is going to retime Gonzalez and Rose in the next couple of months. And you will see the difference, how it's going to happen.
Okay. Thank you. Do you feel, or has maybe do our traffic sequential and the measuring of the lights and the sequence, are we up to snuff what we need to be, or are we still working on other areas of our city?
The timing of.
Chair Perrello, Tatiana, our city engineer. So we, as Andrew was mentioning, we are going through the exercise of retiming mini signals throughout the city, especially in our major corridors like Gonzalez and, as he mentioned, Rose. So yes, we are getting up to snuff on all of that across the board, Mr. Perrello. We are okay right now. Everything that was critical has been addressed, but we are looking at the bigger picture here to make sure, like you said, that everything's flowing, but also to assist with making sure that everything is safe as well.
Okay. Any more question?
No, go ahead, and then go ahead.
Go ahead.
So these are 3 locations, did not have a speed survey done before. So you're setting a new speed limits. So with that, some of the road signs, the speed limit signs has to change on 13 streets, roadway segments. And Steph indicated it's going to cost you about $5,000. And the fund is available in the approved 2022-23 adopted budget for the street division within the general fund. And that concludes my presentation. I'm here to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
So Andrew, I'm not sure if this is for you or for the police department, but and I think you mentioned it earlier that the ENT, right, was there was an ordinance that was placed in 2018. If those ENTs have to be completed every 5 to 10 years, and if we don't do it, then that the police officers cannot give a ticket or enforce a ticket if they, is that correct? It says especially you cannot use a radar gun.
Good evening, Jose Diaz, Traffic Sergeant with Oxnard PD. So with the engineering surveys and issuing citations, just like Mr. Yee explained, there's multiple ways that we can do enforcement. Probably the best way to not only find violators is to use either radar or LiDAR. Specifically, we're able to get vehicles that are a far distance away. There's other methods that are far more difficult, but the issue that we run to is in court, having to testify to that and convincing a judge ultimately that the offender was in violation. That's where we have a lot of difficulty.
So Jose, so if we had not done an ENT study, then the guy could take an attorney and say, hey, they haven't done a study in 5 to 10 years, so you can't give me the ticket because I didn't violate the law.
By ENT, are we referring to traffic and engineering?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, so part of our testimony is providing the copy that's signed by the traffic engineer's office, and then giving that to the judge, which allows us to use the LiDAR or the radar.
And the reason I'm asking that is because Andrew, over when I was with the county over on Nyland Acres off of Santa Clara, the signs were the county engineer had not updated the ENT at the time, and this guy got away without paying the citation because it was not done in time. So,
Correct.
So that's why I was asking that question here.
Mhm.
Thank you, Jose.
Hey, well,
Mhm.
The officer, how often do we update our radar equipment? I mean, just like having to do this study, if we're spending the time and trouble and having officers out there putting their life and limb at risk and doing these things and going through the process of writing tickets, we update our equipment with regularity.
we do. So our certifications for our LiDAR, the maximum is 3 years. So about every 2 years, we send our equipment out for recertification. We also try to update our officers, especially the newer officers who are coming in, to give them the skills and ability. So we're looking for additional training that typically the CHP handles. That's radar and LiDAR training.
It's a calibration, I think is what it is.
Yeah, we call it certification.
Certification, yeah.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Do we keep, aside from speeding tickets, going too fast, do we keep stats on the accidents, the locations of the accidents, the causes of the accidents? Can you share any of that with us?
We do. So we have a software right now that can basically analyze the collisions that are occurring in the city. It's about a month behind, but it gives us a good forecast of our problem areas. And then Switters, who does statewide, and they actually collect the information. And we can actually go to the Switters website and compare ourselves to other cities, how we're performing as well.
And one reason I asked this question is at a recent candidate forum, there were people teeing off on the Oxnard Police Department with accusations that somebody would violate the law and the policeman's there and he's not, going after him, but we don't know what the police officer was called. It could have been a very serious crime one thing. Are there opportunities where we know that there are certain intersections, either with cameras or with documentation, that we know certain intersections are high priority, high occurrence of running red lights or running stop signs?
We do actually, and within the last grant period, which we were awarded the STEP grant through the Office of Traffic Safety, we utilized some of that money to install what we call cheater lights. And those are little lights that we have at intersections that allow an officer to sit downwind of a possible violation, a red light violation, and it's synced with a red light that the driver is facing. So I know for one, Oxnard Boulevard and Gonzales, there's cheater lights there where an officer can stand at a corner of an intersection and monitor red light violations from a safe distance and then go after the offender.
Okay. Is there, the engineer, Mr. Yee, is there anything other than the law that would prevent us from imposing these reductions in speed as soon as the council approves it?
The reason we are able to reduce is because of AB 43, and we can justify with our vehicle code section. That is a main justification for reducing speed limits on those locations.
So if you could help me, if the council approves it and they go through first, second reading, it could be put in place, or is there, we have to wait a number?
As soon as you approve, you can change the sign, it's active as of.
Thank you. Any questions?
No, I just, I don't have additional questions, but I just want to thank staff and the consultant that that's a tremendous amount of work. I mean, you're going from to a tremendous amount of streets here, and with from the posted mileage to the recommended mileage and so forth. But to me, that's a lot of work. And I like to commend Public Works and you and a traffic engineer for all this excellent work. That potentially is going to be a safety issue for our residents, to help our residents,
Chair Perrello.
Oh, that we do have. Okay.
Okay, one more question, but let me ask, and thank you, Madam Clerk, and thank you, City Manager. With respect to the mention of the law enforcement officer, that we share this information and it's statewide. What is the exact information and is it available for our city,
Hmm.
specifically for Oxnard?
Yes, statewide, if you look up with the Office of Traffic Safety, you can look up our stats. I believe they're older. They're about 2018 is the newest stats, and that's just because the time it takes to analyze and get all the traffic collision reports to the CHP office. We do have the ability to to present more recent data, but that data is information that we collect from a standalone software, which is our Crossroads Analytics.
And so, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but I am. It's, if I want, or somebody wants to know the data of Oxnard, they can get that at least to 2018?
That's correct.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
No.
Do we have a speaker? When-
And we have a public speaker, Madam Clerk.
Speaker. Hello?
Yes, afternoon. How are you? Hey, Bert. This is the West Side. I'm glad that we were able to clarify the issue with law enforcement and certain corners on when we have officers actually protecting, to identify certain accidents and to prioritize the public safety. But at the end, I'm the individual that you're actually talking about with your candidate forum. You have to be very specific on why I brought that up. There's a difference between public safety and political harassment with law enforcement. So when I spoke about public safety and traffic accidents, I live in a neighborhood that there's always accidents, and that you have your consultant there, which is 7th Street and Ventura Road. Those are the real issues that we should be concentrating on, not so much specifying what a candidate says in a candidate forum when he has political proof of the harassment. And honestly, our officers should be basing themselves on important corners like 7th Street, where we have children or we have a lot of traffic, right? Kids crossing the street between this street and Ventura Road going to McDonald's. I see a lot of families taking advantage of walking outdoors. So I think it's very important that you really concentrate on the public safety issues, because at the end, our candidate forums are to really improve the community, not to excuse yourself for the mistakes that happened in the past 2 years. You have to understand, I like you as an individual. I came to your office with good respect. I tried working with you. You don't want to talk about issues that were brought to you at the very beginning, and now you want to use taxpayers' money to be very specific to excuse your past actions. I have a lot of respect for law enforcement. My brother's a law enforcement officer. So there's no way you can tell me the difference between a good officer and a bad officer, and a good candidate and a bad candidate, and a good council member and a bad council member. I have a lot of respect for everybody as council. Alex, también tú, you too. You know, the way I was treated by you guys was very disrespectful. What the city council members went through in LA, that's what you guys should do. You guys need to resign as well, because you guys should be embarrassed of your actions. Where we started with Nicole, that's what LA City Council is going through. You guys have law enforcement backing you guys up, making it seem that we back up these communities. Today, the supervisors board had to really step up to the plate to make you guys look good. I'm paying really close attention. So I think at the end, the respect comes down to our elders and our homeless and our veterans. So I hope you realize that I support all these issues that you're bringing up, but at the end, you need to be very specific why I'm going against you and why we need to make things clear to the community. I would be more than glad to step down if you're an honest man. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. Any other comments, Madam Clerk?
We have one more virtual speaker. Speaker with number ending in 4978. Please go ahead.
My name's Larry Stein. Very commendable that we've done these traffic studies for assessment of speed limits. That's great. The concern I had is enforcement of the speed limits. The police department does not want to seem to enforce speed limits at various parts of the city. Behind my house is a three-way stop sign at Emerson and DuPont. I've called numerous times in the past complaining about people going 40 miles an hour through the stop signs. So I'm not the only intersection or living by an intersection where members of the public constantly do this. They blow through stop signs, and the police officers are not available to note the occurrence. because the police department does not want to be out there noting the occurrence. They'd rather be somewhere else, in my opinion, than sitting at a stop sign, waiting for a car to go through a stop sign. Yes, a car may go through the stop sign 5 or 8 times in a 4-hour period, and resources could be better attributed to that officer dealing with a gun violence issue, a homeless issue, or a robbery, for sitting at a stop sign. But the point is, we have a traffic division. So how many times do patrol officers perform traffic duties when we have a traffic division? So when it comes to these stop signs and speed limits, who's going to enforce them? Are patrol officers or traffic division? And will traffic division enforce these only during certain hours of the day, or do we have 24-hour traffic division officers on duty? So what's the purpose of having speed limits if they're not going to be enforced throughout the day and evening? Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for sharing, Mr. Stein.
Chair Perillo, we have one more virtual caller. Public speaker with number ending in 73259. Hello?
Hello?
Yes, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, this is Deirdre Frank.
Go ahead, ma'am. You
the
have
reason-
3 minutes to speak.
Thank you very much. The reason for my call is you're referring your police officer, whoever he is talking about traffic statistics, is referring to the SWITTers. The SWITTers is a state compilation of causes of accidents, the locations, the primary collision factors that deal with state highways. They do not segregate Oxnard city accidents unless they involve state highways, your state roads. So relying on SWITTers is a miscalculation on your part. I would be interested in seeing what the exact statistics are for the Oxnard locations for the most frequent collisions that you're referencing. For example, Oxnard and Gonzales, Rose and Gonzales, Harbor and Woolley, Channel Islands and Victoria. These are specific areas that are not, well, Oxnard Boulevard used to be state. Now, of course, Oxnard Boulevard's been turned over to Oxnard. So, you know, you need some more specifics about this. Reducing speed limits in a municipality can cause a problem in your congestion. And actually, if you look at some of the studies, because I'm a personal injury lawyer and this is all I do, not all I do, but most of what I do is traffic collisions. And we study the reasons for traffic collisions in different municipalities and locations. So you have to look at the consequences of reducing speed limits as instead of maintaining an arterial, you've got arterial roads here, Victoria, Rose, Rice, Harbor, instead of maintaining those speed limits, which allow for the free flow of traffic through. A lot of your problem in Oxnard deals with driver issues. And what we're seeing, and I'm sure your traffic people and your police department will agree, are people violating traffic signals, traffic signs, traffic laws, right turns in front of people that are proceeding straight, all of these things. So I think that you need a better study before you start making some decisions on reducing speed limits or affecting your traffic flow on your city streets. Thank you very much.
Thank you for sharing. Any other speakers, Madam Clerk?
We have a caller that called in but has not raised their hand. That's the only other person we have on the line. We have no other public speakers.
Okay.
Well, I have no additional comments other than initially, Michael, do you want to make some final comments on this?
If you don't mind, I'd just like to clarify a couple of things. Good evening, Chair Mayor
Mm.
Zaragoza, Michael Wolf, Director of Public Works. I just wanted to clarify the ordinance effective. There's an effective timeframe. Maybe our city attorney can address that.
This ordinance, since it's not an urgency ordinance, will not go into effect immediately upon adoption by the council at the next meeting that it goes in front of the council. Typically, it has to be published within 15 days by the city clerk. After that occurs, then it'll have an effective date. And typically, it's a good rule of thumb will be you can expect it to go into effect about 30 days after adoption.
So just wanted to clarify that. The other thing, Chair Perrell, you asked a question about signal timing. I think there was a second part of that question. You're talking about the required timing, green, yellow, red versus what we would consider as licensed engineers corridor timing. And so I think part of your question was answered, but the other part wasn't. And our traffic division, our traffic engineering staff does look at and make sure we meet all the required code signal length in terms of green, yellow, red, those kinds of things. I think that was part of your question versus a coordination question about signal timing across segments of the street. Yes. And the other thing I would like to say is that as Andrew Yee, who's a licensed traffic engineer in the state of California, mentioned speed versus flow. So there are a lot of things that impact the flow of traffic. And that is less to do about speed limits and more to do about all the other potential items such as signal timing, amount of intersections, the amount of driveways, the curvature of the street, whether that's vertical or horizontal. So the setting of speed limits is an enforcement discussion. Part of this discussion tonight had been about flow of traffic and sort of traffic jams kind of conversation. That is not a speed limit conversation. That is about everything else associated with that roadway design and all those things that can impact the flow of traffic. And so I just want to make sure that was clear. Andrew did a very good job of stating that, but just reiterating the fact that tonight we're discussing enforcement really, and it's less to do about flow of traffic than more about enforcement. And the last thing is the collision data. We do have access to collision data, and we do actually use that in terms of applying for grants and getting funding for that. So I think it's an important piece of information that we do have access to and we use. Those are the clarifications I'd like to make. Thank you.
I just have one comment. The last speaker professionally, it's kind of what they do. If there's anything that you can hear from her comments that needs to be brought before this goes to the city council, I hope you'll look into that. And the second thing I can tell you, personal notice. When I was younger, I drove a little different than I do when I'm older. And also the city of Oxnard has gotten older. I know that when the light turns green, I count 1001, 1002, and there will be somebody blowing through that intersection.
Mm-hmm.
And if I was younger, I'd have probably met him right in the middle of the intersection. And that is something that is, in my opinion, has gotten a little more, I see more of that in this community. I can't say I don't see it in other communities, but I spend most of my time in this one. And that gets to the enforcement. And along with the enforcement, I know that the city does an excellent job managing the budget. And the residents of the city of Oxnard need to know there's not enough money in this budget to have a policeman at every intersection. You can't do it. You can't do it. And I wanted to add that. I appreciate the.
So one of the things I would add to that, and we call it all clear, right? So basically your comment is about one leg of the intersection turning red, you kind of count and wait, even though the light is green. We actually have a traffic engineering opportunity. We call it an all clear timeframe. So we actually sometimes in those kinds of intersections where we see that problem, we don't turn the green on right away. It's called all clear, right? Oh, yeah, all red. I'm sorry, not all clear, all red for that very purpose. And so that actually is a traffic engineering solution for those kinds of scenarios where we put, so all signals actually stay red for 1 second because we want to clear the intersection because of those things. So we do have traffic solutions or traffic engineering solutions for those kinds of opportunities. So.
Thank you for adding that. I had no idea. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'd like to bring one other question because you're mentioning this. Statham Boulevard comes and tees into Channel Islands. There are people that go to the market on the east side,
Right.
and there is a crosswalk. And there is a sign that says, yield to the pedestrians. I have been there at times and I'll see people walking out and the left turn arrow comes on for the people stopped at Statham, and they start rolling through, and then they see that somebody's in the crosswalk. And I have not seen a rear end accident, but I've seen, you can hear the brakes locking up. What do we do when we have a pedestrian crossing and there is no digital signboard that says you have, like in some areas of the city, you got so many seconds, you got this, you got that. What do we do, and how much more impacted does an intersection have to be before we put something like that in it? And how does that affect the timing of the sequential lights? Because if nobody's at the intersection putting the button, the traffic's going to flow. But if there is somebody in the crosswalk and they didn't push the button, they're in no man's land. And
Yeah, there's a lot of questions there. Let me see if I can, the answer to that is there are traffic engineering solutions for those kinds of scenarios. Sometimes we call them pedestrian delays or where we allow the pedestrian to go in advance of the signal changing. And so as mentioned, I think one of those is we just recently did. So there are a lot of engineering solutions for those kinds of scenarios where each one of those areas though can be unique in its situation. And so we look at those when we get either calls or reports from PD, like, hey, there's some issues here. And we treat those as specific as possible using the devices that are allowed. So I can't give you a specific answer like what we can do without really diving into the details and seeing all the specifics. But we do have a lot of traffic engineering solutions for those kinds of issues where we would do a pedestrian advance, where the pedestrian signal would go first before you allow the vehicles to go.
that answers my questions.
So I just, I want to thank, our consultant and also our police officer for being here today, and Tatiana and you, Michael. So we're really looking at updating this because we're at the 5-year stage at this time, which I think it's important to make sure that people don't get away with not having to pay their tickets and so forth. So.
Right. This is really, again, trying to get this down to basics. This is about enforcement. And so
yes,
in order for us to have the ability to do multiple types of enforcement, you heard from Sergeant Diaz, the other opportunities they have, which are not as useful as radar and LiDAR. If we don't want to have enforcement, then don't do this. But I think we want to have enforcement. We want to be able to enforce and do it with multiple facets. That's what this is about tonight, is enforcement.
Which is good. But, and again, that's a tremendous amount of work here, I read the whole thing and it just, to the consultant and Tatiana and, it's just a lot of work. And I just want to thank you for that.
And thank you, Mayor. And the reason is you're trying to make the city safer for the residents of Oxnard. And with things that have happened recently,
That's right.
no life is more important than another. We're trying to prevent possibly people getting hurt, loss of property damage or life. I want to thank everybody, Officer Diaz, City Attorney, and City Engineer, Consultant, and yourself. Thank you very much.
We did a motion?
I'll move the recommended action.
Second.
Did City Manager want to say anything before we actually take a vote?
No, I'm just sitting here sweating. I'm worried about a split vote.
Split vote.
We have a city attorney.
Member Zaragoza,
Yes.
Chair Perrello.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries 2-0.
Next item on the agenda, any items for future agenda?
I don't know.
Okay, the only question that I have, it's not necessarily an item for future agenda. And thank you very much for everyone that attended, staff. I had an opportunity to be in the city of Ventura, and I spoke with an individual who works for the city of Ventura. Apparently, they have a rule that the trees at a certain height, when the trees are so high off the ground, they have to be trimmed. There are certain areas of our city, and I know we are doing a great job working on the trees, but garbage trucks continually clip certain trees. And I'm hoping that we can get that, whatever Ventura is doing, if we need to copy it, the highest form of flattery, but I'm sure Oxnard can come up with something a little bit better.
But you know what? I don't have to worry about my tree because they trim it every time they pick up my trash. Thank you.
And any comments?
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. This meeting is adjourned.